Chad, you know what I'm excited about? Power Monkey Camp is coming up very soon. And you know what one of my favorite parts of Power Monkey Camp is? The food. Rosie Joe Meals and her amazing food that she provides to all the campers and the staff throughout the entire week. What do you think about Rosie Joe and her stuff?
Incredible food. Not only do I get it at camp, but I also get it here at home with the meals that she delivers. And, I've heard so many campers say that same thing as well. It's one of their favorite parts of camp. It's why I think our return campers come back, not for us,
Oh, yeah.
but for Rosie Joe.
Absolutely. She ships nationwide now. She's a Texas girl. The portions are huge. You guys will absolutely love it. She's also the chef for the 2020 CrossFit Games Athletes and provides regular meals for some of the top athletes in the CrossFit community. If it's good enough for the top athletes, it's good enough for you guys. We love Rosie Joe. We love Katie and her staff. Her meals are absolutely amazing. Chad, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, no doubt. I just ate one of my favorites for lunch today. Actually, it's the honey mustard chicken thighs that comes with mashed butternut squash, which I did not think I would like, but it's delicious, and Brussels sprouts as well. Probably my all-time favorite, though, Dave, are the banana pancakes.
Banana pancakes, amazing. Her scones are legendary. Everything that Rosie Joe makes is a hit at camp. Guys, you can bring this at home with you now if you head to rosiejoemeals.com. That's ROSIEJO meals.com and use the offer code PMC10 for 10% off your meal order when you spend $100 or more. Check out Rosie Joe Meals. You guys will not be disappointed. Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. We invite coaches, athletes, and industry leaders in our community who are willing to open up about their setbacks and successes to educate and inspire our listeners. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Chad Vaughn, and on today's episode, we are interviewing Major Allison Brager. Allison is as close to an actual real-life Avenger as I've ever met. She's an absolutely incredible person that has accomplished so many things in so many different areas. She is part of the Warrior Fitness team with the Army, so she is a high-level CrossFit competitor who has been in the sport for a number of years, over a decade, has not missed a CrossFit Open. She is also a sleep research specialist, being a neuroscientist for the Army, researching sleep specifically as it pertains to how to get more out of athletes. She wrote a book recently called Meathead: Unraveling the Athletic Brain. She is an incredible person who is also in line to be a potential astronaut one day. I've never met someone in the Army astronaut program. She is an incredible person with an incredible amount of knowledge. We learn a lot about some things that we can implement on a regular basis, no matter what your background is, on how to improve your sleep, especially if you're an athlete looking to improve their sleep. I really hope that we can get Allison back on because we really just touched the surface on all of the research that she's doing, but we hope you guys enjoy this one with Allison Brager. Should I call you Captain Alice? Are you Captain at this point?
I'm Major.
Major Allison Brager. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with Chad and I. Here he goes. Castro's just about to write up on the board. So we are in the process of finding out what 21.3 is.
And maybe 4.
And maybe 4. So Castro just wrote out 15 front squats will be the first part of the workout. So Chad, right up your alley. It's just the barbell though, so unfortunately no.
I was gonna say if it's more than 95, I might have to actually do the workout.
It is 30 toes to bar as the second part of the movement. And so Allison, actually you're pretty close right now to what you were thinking.
13.4, I'm pretty close.
Then 15 thrusters.
Oh. With an empty barbell?
No, it's
okay.
95. It's 95-65.
Okay.
The weights, yeah. So he's writing more to it. Of course, there's more.
Dang, that's a
then 15 front squats, 30 toes to bar, 15 thrusters, 15 again, 30, 15. So it looks like maybe 3 rounds of that.
Wow, that's a lot of toes to bar.
Oh, there's like arrows. I don't have the audio on it. There's just like arrows going all over the place. It looks like just someone's trying to explain theory of relativity right now.
Your own adventure like last year?
Yeah, it is a little bonkers. So that's the general scheme. I don't know what he's talking about beyond that, but it looks like 3 rounds of 15, 30, 15. He's writing more stuff in there. Oh, now he's saying the second movement is 30 chest to bar. not 30 toes to bar. And then the third movement on the 30 side is bar muscle ups.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice.
Wow.
And then so there's 3 different barbell movements as well, Dave, or just the 2?
Right now it's just 2. Right now it looks like 15, 30, 15 is the scheme. Front squats and thrusters stay the same, and the 30s go from toes to bar to chest to bar muscle up.
Victor of Victory Grips is going to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's probably already throwing up how to get through this workout and not tear up your hands, right?
Yeah, I should.
All right.
After this.
Well, I'm excited to do this. Allison, you actually mentioned that you got asked to do something really interesting with this workout. Can you describe exactly how you'll be doing it?
Yeah, so I found out last night after I was doing night diving last night, which is not very gentle on your body, but so be it. So I'm going to go into this workout knowing I'm already like under recovered and somewhat in pain, so might as well just push it to the max. But I got asked to fill in for the Out Athletics live workout going against Eric Evans at 8 p.m. And what's super cool is they're going to broadcast it from the Puma store in New York City, Times Square, which actually I just realized today on Facebook. So it was a year ago today that I got the call to come out to New York City to help with So it is like super weird to think about because literally like a year ago today, I was showing up in Times Square, helping like de-escalate COVID there. So
unbelievable,
cool, right?
Well, I mean, the amount of stuff that we could talk about with you is going to take much more than one podcast because in reality, you're as real life of an Avenger as I've ever met. You are a real life superhero, and the listeners are going to slowly start to realize that this is absolutely true. When you talk about all the amazing things that you have going on in your life, I really don't know how you have the time to fit in everything that you do at such a high level. But obviously, the athletic side of it is important. You're competing tonight with the Open, but you're actually part of the Warrior Fitness team with the Army. Is that correct? How long have you been part of the Warrior Fitness team?
Since day one. So the Warrior Fitness team was started 3 years ago. We had tryouts at Fort Knox in Kentucky, and that's where I met also, Power Monkey camper, Captain Casey Clark. And in a small world, she had roomed with my previous teammate, Emily Bridgers, at the last Wadapalooza. So we became like instant friends and teammates. But so after the tryouts, they selected the team. A majority of us have competed in regionals in the games prior, either on a team or as an individual. And then I was the first wave of people to come in July of 2019. And by December of 2019, we had the full team roster and we trained full time together in an absolutely beautiful facility that the Army built for us. And yeah, we compete on behalf of the Army and CrossFit at the highest level. It's really a dream job come true for any of us. But then, for me being in the field of human performance to then on the back end, implement some of the evidence-based recovery techniques and collect data when I can to help the team get better. It's been super awesome.
That's incredible. And I do want to get into, the science behind the research that you're doing too, but just kind of sticking with the actual competitive side of things a little bit. You came more from track and field background initially, right? Did some pole vaulting and things like that collegiately. Yep, go ahead.
No, so I only made it up to level 8 in gymnastics. I did start competing gymnastics competitively in 5th grade, like, the 96 Magnificent.
Sure, yeah. Mag 7, yep.
Was my inspiration. And so I did gymnastics, only made it to level 8 throughout high school, but I was also a 2-sport athlete, did track and field. When I was a junior, I became one of the first female pole vaulters in the state of Ohio because, crazy enough, girls were not allowed to pole vault until 2002.
Wow.
Which is nuts to think about, right? But yeah, I competed in pole vault and hurdles in college, eventually transitioned to the heptathlon because, like, if you could pole vault, you could figure out how to throw the javelin and the shot put, everything like that. competed after college, coached after college when I was in graduate school. And then I happened to find CrossFit through, I grew up with Dan Bailey, and he was down the street doing CrossFit, and I kept getting kicked out of the weight room for trying to do like Olympic lifts, plyometrics, and squatting in the, so I'm talking about like the Gen Pop, like recreation weight room at Kent State University. So I was like, sure, Dan, like, let's do CrossFit. And I was super lucky. The gym I went to, they were like already games level athletes. So I got my ass kicked right from the beginning, but in the best way possible. And have been fortunate enough to, just surround myself with amazing athletes who are better than me over the years.
And it's always been a goal of mine to get kicked out of 24-hour fitness or something like that for dropping a heavy clean and jerk or something, but I never got around to doing that. Now you probably wouldn't be kicked out of 24-hour fitness for doing that. I'm not sure, but that's just another incredible accomplishment that you have there, being kicked out of a gym for Olympic lifting. I love it.
I mean, at the time I was like, shit, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
Like,
well, hanging out with Dan Bailey, having him down the street isn't such a bad person to start out with.
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, he's such a great guy. And
absolutely
see his success over the years, because I've literally known him since like teenagers.
Before we go forward, keep that thought, Chad. I just want to add that they did announce 21.4 to go along with it.
Have at it.
And it is a little addition right at the end. It's a 15-minute time cap on the first portion of 21.3. Oh. And the second portion is max load for this complex: 1 deadlift, 1 clean, 1 hang clean, 1 jerk. And you have to build up to your max of that complex.
So 1 deadlift, 1 clean from the ground, and then 1 hang clean, and then a jerk.
1 hang clean, and then 1 jerk, and you have 7 minutes to complete that.
Yeah, I wonder what the standard is when you do the deadlift. You just can't let go of it, or what? That would be interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to look at the standards, but yeah, you got 7 minutes to complete all that as well.
Awesome.
As a max. Yeah,
love it.
So there you go, Chad. You got your max lift in there.
All right. Well, maybe I can beat you in 21.4. Actually, I don't know, Dave.
Well, can you beat 135?
I don't know. Right now, I'm pretty out of shape. I'll have to tell you that I might not be able to.
I'm pretty sure that I'm not going much further than that.
Well, but speaking of the Open, another very incredible and interesting stat that I came across is that you've competed in, this is your 11th Open to be competing in. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm so lucky. I've never missed a CrossFit Open workout. I've competed in every single Open and every single workout. Even when I was deployed over in Kuwait doing research over there, I still, like, they had Friday Night Lights. It was pretty awesome because that was the first year they had dumbbells. So it was 2018. And like, we had these super crappy dumbbells in the airplane hangar. But because, they're always so concerned about soldier moral health and welfare downrange, somehow they managed to get like this huge shipment of dumbbells in time for 2017.
That's awesome.
Or 2018. And like, we did the workout. It was so cool.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Well, another thing that I saw on your Instagram that I think I like most about you, Allison, is you have a wiener dog. You just have one wiener dog?
Yes. Her name is, it's so funny. Like, I brought her at a conference this weekend. And the last time I came to this conference, I brought her. And so that was like the first question my friend Annette asked. She was like, "Where's Eva?" Because she was like the unofficial mascot. Like, she's so cute and so like docile. I could literally bring her anywhere. Like, she's gone to so many conferences in her life. She's
nice. Yeah, I just had to bring that up because we have 2 wiener dogs ourselves and we love them. So we're big fans, and we can relate to anyone that owns a wiener dog very well. So they're like our little energy heating blanket at night, right?
Oh my God, yes, they're the biggest snugglers ever. Yeah. And people don't believe me. And the owners of the CrossFit gym I used to go to in DC, they like ended up getting wiener dogs because of my wiener dog. And like, they love it. They're like, I've never seen a dog that cuddles this much.
Mm-hmm.
You guys will have some stuff to talk about at camp, because Allison is, of course, coming to camp as one of our new lecturers this time around, starting in a few weeks. So you guys will have a chance to catch up on all things wiener dog related.
Hey, let's just bring all the wiener dogs and make it a wiener dog camp as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I could bring Eva, I will 100% bring Eva. She's like so lovable.
Bring her along. Bring her along.
All right, sweet.
Can't mascot this year. That'll work.
Yeah, exactly. So talk a little bit about your athletic background. I'm sure we could spend much more time there, but the research that you're doing and more your science background is what I want to kind of dive into, because I think that's going to be the most helpful for our listeners in terms of the research that you're doing. You're doing it predominantly with top athletes within the Army, but can you go a little bit into what type of research you're doing? I know it has to do a lot with like mental resiliency and trying to get maximum potential out of the athletes that you're working with. But can you talk a little bit about some of the research that you're actually working on right now?
Sure. So actually, a lot of my research is focused more on underlying like DNA, biology, genes, and like hormones that sort of separate elite athletes from non-elite, or like in the military, we say resilient individuals versus sensitive individuals. So there's this idea that we all handle stress differently. And there's both a psychological component and there's a biological, physiological component. So I look at more of the physiological, biological component in terms of if you have any predisposing, like special, unique genes or like attributes about your physiology that make you more resilient to sleep deprivation, or the ability to endure like really high intensity stress through working out more so than others. You could see why this is an attribute, right? For the Army, you want those super soldiers downrange, and you want to man your roster with super soldiers, just like an NFL wants to man their roster with super athletes. And so that's really the basis of my research. My PhD is in biology, and I've always focused in biology and neuroscience and studying the brain at very basic levels, from like the biochemistry to the connections to like targeting specific brain areas with certain drugs. I love it so much. I even have so this is my neurochemical recipe of grit on my arm.
Nice.
Dopamine is the chemical of pain and pleasure, and then adenosine is more or less the neurochemical of life. It's what makes up ATP, the cellular energy of the cell. It's what makes up the backbone of DNA. It's released heavily when you're sleepy. It's what caffeine acts on in order to keep you awake. But yeah, I'm like straight up like mad science nerd.
So this type of research seems to be fascinating. So there are specific genes. Are you working on discovering these more now, or are there specific ones that you've already discovered, people have been researching right now, that do show people's capacity to be more resilient? And what are those specific, genes and factors that kind of play into that?
Yeah, so this is ongoing for me. So some of my biggest findings, honestly, like my biggest, how I'm known as like Allison Brager in the sleep field is I discovered this protein factor in skeletal muscle that has the ability to regulate resiliency to sleep deprivation. So there's sort of this central dogma that sleep is by the brain, for the brain, and of the brain. And when my team and I discovered this protein factor in skeletal muscle, so basically what we did is we manipulated this protein that's heavily expressed in the brain, but it's also heavily expressed in skeletal muscle. When we manipulated it and like the genetic environment of it in skeletal muscle, we saw this huge change in sleep. And we're talking like identifying sleep at the level of like brain activity. So there's like huge changes in brain activity all by altering the protein expression in skeletal muscle.
Wow.
But when we did this in the brain, it had no impact. So things like that. I've done human clinical trial studies with this too. We recently published a paper where we found that this naturally occurring mutation of one of the genes related to the immune system, it's called TNF alpha. TNF alpha is a huge regulator of immune responses, like both innate and adaptive immune responses, like with vaccines and stuff. We found that people that had this naturally occurring mutation are just naturally more resilient to sleep deprivation and like very aggressive sleep deprivation. We put them on a schedule that's actually one of the longest sleep deprivation schedules ever done in the lab.
How long is that?
Well, it was an 18-day study, and they were awake 80% of the time.
Mhm.
So they would stay fully awake for 48 hours. Then they'd have 3 days to recover, and then 48 hours again, 3 days to recover, 48 hours again. So they end up being awake for like over, 132 hours. But
Wow.
honestly, that's very common to what we see when
Hmm.
soldiers are deployed downrange. So
Mhm.
it's not
Hmm.
uncommon as well.
Wow. So this the sleep portion of it seems to be a factor that you can almost weed out early on in the selection process for what you call a super soldier, right? Or like SEALs that are doing kind of these, crazy missions and things like that. Are those things that are taken into account when soldiers are actually being um, looked at initially, or is this still all being done later down the road to say, oh, we looked at this maybe a little bit later than the true application could be helpful for?
Yeah, it's definitely later on down the road when you're like, oh, those people pre-select into this career field or do this because of that.
Mhm.
Uh, an example I like to give, I told my students this today, is like the US presidents, all of them historically have been short sleepers.
Mhm.
And that is not a coincidence. There is a gene called DEC2. It's the short sleep gene. And if you have it, you only have to sleep like 2 to 4 hours a night and you're
Whoa.
perfectly fine. But remember, this is like 0.25% of
Mm.
the entire population. So we're
Mhm.
talking a very, very slim part of the bell curve. It's the same reason why I tell people this. I am a chronic night owl. I know I selected into research and academia because, like, most of us are night owls. And so I will never be an army general. Like, even if I wanted to be a general, I would never be one because I suck at mornings. And like that lifestyle requires you to be absolutely functioning at your best in mornings. And literally,
Mhm.
my body would tell me, no, Allison, like, you can't be a general because it would break down and I would get sick all the time.
Mm. So it seems like the hope is that later down the road, once this becomes a little bit more flushed out, to be able to use it as part of the assessment process, right? To say you're going to go down this track because you're more predisposed to have the characteristics and the genes to be able to be, someone who only needs this amount of sleep or can handle themselves better under sleep deprived situations. Is that kind of what we're trying to work towards here, to try to select as accurately as possible, as early as possible, with the best soldiers possible, the best recruits possible for specific tasks?
Yeah, absolutely. This is 100% what we're trying to do. And what I should clarify though is it's not just like selecting the 1% or the top 5%, because our genetic diversity is extremely diverse as humans, especially like with so many different ethnicities. Like your ethnicity determines a lot of your genetic background. So one of the things we also find is like there are genetic trade-offs. So, with this TNF alpha study we did, we found that those individuals who were resilient to sleep deprivation, they actually were very tolerant to caffeine. So, like,
Hmm.
caffeine could not make them any better. But then people who were sensitive to sleep deprivation were also extremely sensitive to caffeine, where caffeine could make them better. So that's what's like really great about this model is like if you don't have the genetic attributes in this regard, that doesn't mean you're like out of luck. You could actually have a genetic attribute in another regard of stress.
Right. Well, you
And
just got
that's
to
what's so
end
cool
up.
about, yeah, discovering these genes.
That's fascinating. So you end up having to pound crazy amounts of coffee to match what this person already has in genetic makeup.
Yeah.
um, is there any ethnicities that have been found to be more capable of being sleep resilient? Anything like you found with that in terms of ethnic backgrounds?
Um, so I want to say there is this one, I don't want to be misquoted, but I feel like there's this one like Eastern European cohort. But I will say in athletics, they have found this. Like
Hmm.
one of the coolest stories is so my own book, Meathead, was inspired by David Epstein, who wrote The Sports Gene.
Hmm.
And I love that story that the fastest sprinters in the world, like even people who compete for the US, but like originally were from Jamaica. They literally come from this single village in Jamaica, and they have this unique genetic mutation. It's called SCN8A, and it like basically makes their tendons like super pliant. So it's like being on a vaulting springboard.
Mm-hmm.
So like stories like that, and I think like the Norwegian cross country skiers, it's the same thing with like their ability to like how hemoglobin is bound, and like their ability to like maintain these insanely high aerobic thresholds is all driven by this one subpopulation of genes.
That's incredible. I find all this stuff so
Mm.
fascinating. Chad, I'm going to let you jump in because I can just keep asking questions and you're
No,
not going to be able to speak at all. So
no, it's awesome. I'm just sitting here listening in because it's all incredible stuff. And really, the biggest thing that I'm curious about with everything that you're saying, Allison, is how much can you train resiliency, for the physical part of it, and should we even be trying to do that, or should we just fall into what our natural abilities are? Like you said, it's no coincidence that the presidents have all been able to go on very little sleep, um, and that kind of thing. Should we look into training resiliency, and can you?
No, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's a mix of both. Like I know Christopher Walken's at whatever that one movie, he's like nature versus nurture. Nature always wins. Like it is about nature and nurture. So the nurture side falls along this. There's this like classic physiology principle called homeostasis, where like basically your body is in a balance. So if you over push it, then it needs a certain period of rest. It's the same thing with sleep, right? Like sleep is a homeostatic or homeostasis process where for every hour awake, you require this much amount of sleep. It's the same thing with training. But how you build resiliency through training is just like a very good strength and conditioning program, right? Where you're constantly pushing the envelope, like you're doing like micro doses of like stress that then you give a body an ample period of recovery, and you're able to keep like pushing the barometer. And so that what results in a condition known as allostasis, where basically with allostasis you take this baseline and through like micro doses of stress, you can increase your baseline. So that's, I think, like the perfect model, and like these training programs that we're working with now to develop. It's a mix of finding the right genetic background, and then like once you have that genetic background, to like train them in certain domains where you're trying to get to allostasis. I mean, I think CrossFit is the best example of allostasis. Like even redoing 17.1 last week, like that would be a good example of allostasis, where like you've maintained this training over 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
and now even if your like movements are way more efficient, but say like your cardiovascular system is not as efficient now because of
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic, you're still in a state of allostasis because of that constant um, stress, but positive stress to your body.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. And what about if we bring in the mental part of it? You talked about, mental resiliency and sensitivity. Do you have a percentage of, if we look at someone's overall resiliency or sensitivity to anything, how much of that is physical and how much of it is mental?
I mean, it has to be the perfect mix of both. I'm not a mental health or clinical psychologist, but at the same time, like, this as an athlete, like as soon as the mind gives up, it's over. Like your body, and I think like the CrossFit open workouts are the perfect example of that, right? Like on 21.2 last week, it could be super easy to give up early because you're already in screaming and so much pain, and you're using your mind to sort of like
Mm-hmm.
distract yourself from the pain by like focusing on the movement or focusing on your breath and efficiency. But as soon as your mind gives up, like it's over. So I do think it is a balance. And I mean, I think obviously the both of you know that too, like just from own snippets of your amazing athletic careers.
Yeah, it's certainly easy to come to that conclusion for anyone that's pushed to the level that we have, and certainly you can see examples of that as a coach and teacher in the community over and over and over again. Athletes that have an extreme level of physical talent, but they're kind of lazy, so they don't really get as much out of their body. I mean, I know I beat a lot of that, most of the athletes that I competed against, and say that were in the top 5 or 10 of my weight class, because I feel like I had a better handle on the mental side of thing. They were definitely stronger than me, but it's really cool to hear that from someone with your background, putting it all together. You're doing all these studies and everything else, and to see that match up on the science side of stuff is really cool.
Yeah.
On the sleep portion of it, again, is there you said, there's a very small percentage of the population that can get away with that 2 to 4 hour. Would you say it was called DEC2 or something like that? That is the
DEC2.
DEC2. So DEC2 is kind of this little.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's beneficial or not, but it gives the ability for people to get away with less sleep. But
Yeah.
is there a recommendation from your findings as to what is kind of optimal? We've heard between 7 and 9 hours. What do you think kind of is an optimal amount of sleep for someone who is as athletic and kind of in the world where we are with functional fitness and CrossFit?
Excellent question. Funny enough, the symposia we're speaking about tomorrow, it's myself and a group of us who more or less started the field of looking at sleep in athletes. We're talking about this. So optimal for us is the higher end of the spectrum. So 9 hours plus. The example I like to use for the athletes is LeBron James sleeps 11 hours a day. And it's not because LeBron James has an underlying sleep disorder or issues sleeping. It's because he trains so much. And he's not the only one. I know there are other pro athletes out there who sleep 11, 12 hours a day, but he trains so much that his body requires that much sleep. Again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, this idea of homeostasis. The more you work,
Right.
the more you have to recover. Sleep's no different, because sleep is where we replenish those energy reserves of glucose and fats and ATP and the hormone release of testosterone and growth hormone. We only ever release that during sleep. So you have to get that sleep in order to recover. And I think that's what's so great now about all those wearables out there that examine recovery, like the Whoop. The Whoop has been great for, sleep practices across America, because people are realizing, holy crap, if I sleep this much on a night, I could stay in the green, versus if I want to shortchange my sleep by 45 minutes, I now go from the green to the amber,
Yeah. Yeah. I love my Whoop. I use it all the time, and it just gives me a better ability over a course of time to see kind of where my habits are, whether or not, I'm actually prepared to do the load that I'm, anticipating to do. So, if I'm going to try and do this workout tomorrow, 21, 3, and 4, if I'm going to try and do that tomorrow, am I actually physically ready, or should I get another night's sleep before I actually give it a go?
Yeah.
So upwards on the 9 hours. Now, the quality of sleep also matters, correct? In terms of the phases that you're in. What is the recommendation there? You could be in bed for 10 hours, but if it's poor quality sleep, it's not really doing much for you. So what would you have to say in terms of the quality of the sleep?
Yeah. So in the sleep field, we use this marker called sleep efficiency, which basically means it looks at your total actual sleep against your time in bed. So it's mathematical proportions. And having a sleep efficiency of 94, 95% or higher is great. As soon as you start dropping in the 80s, that's concerning. So yeah, you want to spend most of your night asleep. I mean, so when we go through these sleep cycles, we transition from non-REM sleep, which is more like physical recovery, to REM sleep, which is more cognitive recovery, back into a state of wake before we cycle again. But the difference is we might be in awake, but it's usually very subtle and sort of subconscious, where your brain is briefly awake for a second, but it's not long enough where the rest of your body reacts and you wake up. Ideally, you should only have 1 or 2 awakenings across the night, usually to get up and go pee, because the hormone that stops you from having to go pee in the middle of the night, it's called antidiuretic hormone. Just the signal shuts off, so you have to get up and pee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my favorite classes that I took in college, we had this class that was very popular at Stanford called Sleep and Dreams, and it was
You
with
took
Dr. William Dement.
self-defense class?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, and
Oh my God.
it was amazing. He actually lived next door to my coach, so we knew him quite well over the years. But it was one of the most classic classes at Stanford that everybody had to take. He would bring out narcoleptic dogs. He had a section in the class where you could go to sleep for extra credit. It was amazing. And one of the things he talked a lot about was sleep debt, and this idea of over time you accumulating poor sleep or not enough hours that your body particularly needs. And I'm curious if that is something that sleep research is still showing, that you can over time catch up to your needs if you get more hours that you might have lost in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I'm going to go on a tangent here. So first off, I am part of Bill DeBent's pedigree. His very first graduate student was Dr. Mary Carskadden, who is the woman whose Sleep and Dreams course I took at Brown University.
Amazing.
And so I'm like Bill DeBent's granddaughter in research. He used to talk about living next to the Stanford gymnastics coach. Yeah.
He used to talk about his dogs.
Oh yeah. So he and Emmanuel Mignot, they were actually narcoleptic dachshunds. I don't know if you know this, Ed. Like dachshunds have the narcoleptic gene, and they used to breed them at a colony. They had a colony of narcoleptic dachshunds at Stanford.
Wow.
And so actually Bill DeMent, he passed away earlier this year. He was like 94 though, like lived a really full life, taught that class up until his deathbed. Like,
unbelievable.
At Stanford. And I've actually been one of the people asked to be like a guest lecturer in his class. And it's like, I'm super honored because literally Sleep and Dreams is like the #1 college course across America. Like
wow.
The college courses that like students remember for the rest of their life. There's this computer science course at Harvard, and it's the Sleep and Dreams course that Bill DeMent taught at Stanford. So that's so
amazing.
You took that course.
Oh yeah, I have I think one of his books too that he might have signed for me. Yeah, it was
Sleep is.
What's that?
Is it Why We Sleep?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, he was a huge part of the Stanford experience. Like if you went to Stanford, you had to take that class. It was just a must.
Yeah, he was a legend. But back to Bill DeMent's point, it's so true. So as Bill DeMent used to say, sleepiness makes you stupid. And it's true because sleep is like a bank account. The more you take out, the more you have to put back. And if you don't put it back, it literally makes you stupid. Like,
I'll never forget the line. Drowsiness is red alert. That's what it was. It was drowsiness is red alert. That was that's what the one-liner was.
Yep.
Well, we've talking a lot about sleep right now, of course, and of course we would with you on, but we've talked a lot about sleep with a lot of our guests, right, Dave? I mean, it's something that we talk about very regularly, and I always want to get your opinion or the guest opinion or recommendations on how to get more sleep, because I'm a night owl as well, right? Mm-hmm. So I've tried different things through the years, and I think at this point there's other things that I could do and try, but it's not natural for me to go to sleep at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. I think my natural bedtime, if I let myself do what my body wants, is probably like 1 o'clock or something like that, and then I would get up at 9 or 10 in the morning, and I would be great. And that's actually what my body did when I was training at my highest level. I just couldn't go to sleep until 1:30, something like that. I got up at 10. Luckily, I was able to do that. My schedule allowed for that, and I trained really well. And that's probably I believe it's one of the reasons I did as well as I did, because I didn't make myself get up earlier than that. I was able to do that, right? But now, at this point in my life, my body still kind of wants to go to bed at that time. I normally go to sleep at maybe 11:30 or 12, but I've got a kid, so I've got to get up at around 6:30 and get her ready for school and take her to school and everything else. So I struggle with that. That's something that I am drowsy a lot of times in the day and everything else. And do you have any recommendations? I mean, not just for me, yes, I'll take them if you have them, but for anyone else that, they're hearing all of these things about sleep, about how important it is. Obviously, it's very important. Most people need 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Um, how can they learn to go to sleep sooner? Is it possible?
That is awesome of you to admit. I wish more athletes would um, listen and hear this sentiment because I'm like you. I am a genetic night owl. I know that because I've looked at my own DNA, like decoded from 23andMe, and I'm a genetic night owl. Makes sense. My parents
Hmm.
are too. My
Right.
natural bedtime is between 12:30 and 1.
Right.
And when I was a fellow and in graduate school, like I could do my own schedule because I was doing experiments in the lab on my own
Hmm.
accord. And my best years in CrossFit and even competing in college were when I was going to bed between 1 and
Right.
like going to bed at 1 a.m. and waking up at 9 a.m., 10
Yep.
a.m. So yeah, it does, like, there is compromise. There's going to be, but you have to use like what we call effective countermeasures. So the biggest thing, and this doesn't even require like sleep supplements or anything, is you could sort of trick or coax your brain into being in a sleep like state, all by changing the lighting environment in your house. So every night before we go to sleep, like we release melatonin from the pineal gland, and the connection is directly tied to the retina. So based on the incoming light information, your levels of alertness, or like whether or not drowsiness is red alert, is determined by the lighting environment. So if you're setting up your lighting environment to be very dimly lit, and this is actually what like Bill Dement and all of us do in our sleep studies, you could actually trick the brain into going to sleep earlier by like pre-releasing, or moving to the left the release of the natural release of melatonin.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, we don't have to talk too much about the Matt Frazier, Joe Rogan podcast, but I think Matt talked a little bit about having a lighting machine. And he also mentioned that he got 10 hours of sleep at night. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's the other thing is the sleeping environment, right? Is like you should not be working up until bedtime. You should put away your work an hour before bed. And that's, we say that now because of light.
Hmm.
It directly stops the release of melatonin because of the blue light. But even if you're wearing blue light glasses, like your brain is still working, right? You're still talking to your friends, you're still working, you're still active. Like at least an hour before bed, you should be in this state of relaxation and not be doing any work. Um, I'm like you. I also happen to have two sleep disorders. I have mild sleep apnea, which is common in about like 70% of athletes in the military. We've done studies to show that even in Division I football players, we have studied them much like Bill Dement used to study the athletes, that many of them fit the diagnosis or at high risk for sleep disorders. And it's the same thing in our military too. 70% of our entire active duty population of 500,000 soldiers suffers from something like mild sleep apnea. And then I also have restless leg syndrome. Mine is genetic, but so I always have to make sure I go to bed early, even though my biology is like, I don't want to, but I have to set up my sleeping environment in a way where it's tricking my brain to fall asleep. And then I do fall asleep because I do train so much too. So my body knows it needs it.
Nice. So what time are you able to go to sleep now?
So I'm able to go to bed as early as 10:30. Sometimes 10, but 10's pushing
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, that gives me hope. That's awesome to hear that. Another thing that I wonder is how important or potentially beneficial can background noise be? Because I know I feel like I sleep better when there's a fan on. Yes, it keeps me cool and that helps as well. But the noise of the fan or just the noise of something tends to help me sleep a little bit better.
Yeah, so that's real science as well. I used to think it was gimmicky, but then there's a study done at Northwestern. It's this loop called the thalamocortical loop. I'm sure Bill DeMett talked about that in his Sleep and Dreams course, but it's like a link between the cortex of the brain and the thalamus, which is like the gateway for sensory information of the brain. So it's this feedback loop, and white noise, but in particular, it's called pink noise.
Oh yeah.
So pink noise is like a softer form of white noise. It stimulates this loop, and that can help like coax the brain into sleep.
Can
We've
you
been using pink noise with my daughter, my 1-year-old, and it's like magic. Like we can't do anything. We put pink noise on, and she falls right. I was like,
yeah,
this is amazing.
can you guys define what that is? I've actually never heard of that.
So it sounds like white noise. So white noise is just like, you can't really, it's like the noise of a fan or like the noise of static on a radio, but it's softer. I guess it'd be like closer to like meditation or music playing like you hear in a yoga studio. But it's like not
do you guys know what ASMR is? ASMR, like they do it on YouTube a lot. I can't even remember what it stands for, but they just talk really softly in a microphone, or they make just, really, really light noises, and it's supposed to help you sleep. And I wonder if that would be considered pink noise. But Dave, do you guys have some sort of pink noise machine or something?
We have a pink noise Spotify channel that we put on.
Nice.
It's pink noise is a Spotify channel. So you can just put that on and it just repeats, and it goes through like various kind of different tones and things like that throughout the night, but it seems to work wonders to keep her down. So we've been using it quite a bit.
Nice. Well, maybe I need the trick of a 1-year-old. Maybe that'll work.
Yeah.
I just looked up AASR. It's just like it's like guided meditation. That's what it is. And that's a thing too. So I've been with O2X all this week, working with the Fort Lauderdale Fire Department, and I've been talking about lecturing about sleep for 2 hours every morning. And then Annie Oakland, she's one of the yogi meditation instructors. She has been like guiding them through this because she helped develop this back at Walter Reed right after the Iraq invasion to help like Iraqi veterans who were suffering from PTSD and traumatic brain injury and all these terrible things. So that's it's very evidence-based, and it's done a lot of people like it has helped so many people over the years.
What about napping and playing catch up with what you might not be able to get throughout the night through sleeping throughout the day? Say you have the ability to nap. I used to nap a lot when I was training. I had the ability to do it in the middle of the day between my training sessions. I found it to be incredibly helpful. I would feel so rested going to my second session. My question is not whether or not it's helpful, because it seems like it is, but is there an optimal amount of time? Is there a time that, is like 20 minutes kind of sufficient to be able to kind of recharge, or is it dependent on the amount of lack of sleep that you got the night before?
That is an excellent question. So yeah, we've like coined this term in the military now called TNT, or tactical napping time. And
Perfect.
We've actually like implemented it in like policy changes. So there's this new training manual that came out across the Army in terms of like how leaders have to train soldiers, and like tactical napping time is part of that. But with TNT, you have to restrict your nap to like 20 or 30 minutes. And the reason for that is like you want to get the body and the brain into like a state of relaxation, but you don't want to overdo it, because then you can't function afterwards. Like the point of a nap is to have like a quick charge, just like espresso. But the benefit of a nap is you're replacing that sleep debt that Bill DeMent talks about. But yeah, it's always stick within 20 to 30 minutes. Like we even say the same like at O2X when we talk to these firefighters who do the 24-hour shift, is like you want to do these strategic naps where you can let your body relax for 20 minutes instead of like trying to sleep through your shift, because you're not going to since you're anticipating a call. So yeah, 20 or 30 minutes, there's so much research, and a lot of that was done at Stanford by Bill and his team, and then also at Harvard by one of the other graduate students that Bill trained. pretty much the entire sleep field goes back to Bill Dement. He is like, literally, he was the godfather of sleep medicine.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yep.
So there is some truth to power napping, and I've played with that a little bit actually, and I don't know why I still haven't been doing that, because the little bit that I did, it certainly made a difference in my day. Just even going in there and closing my eyes for 20 minutes, even if I wasn't able to fully go to sleep, I could get up and finish the rest of my day much stronger, just cognitively than I would otherwise. So I think I may try to do that once again as well. And Dan Pope, who is a Power Monkey coach, has been wearing blue glasses, right?
Yeah, a bunch
blue
of
light
them
glasses
are wearing them now,
for a long time, and that's something that I want to try as well. So for blue light glasses, how would you recommend to use those? At what time do you put them on?
So honestly, I have no issue with using blue light glasses throughout the day. If, say, you don't have a job like a firefighter or like somebody where you have to react to a call right away. Like sometimes they need like blue light to like help them stay awake when they need to focus. But if you're just like doing computer work, that's great, because blue light is not natural. It was light created by technology. Natural light is best. So if you happen to be like working in a dark room and you're at a computer screen, I would honestly wear your blue light glasses all day. And, they're like super fashionable enough. My best friend's like, I love these glasses. I bought her a pair recently for her birthday. And she's like, I love these glasses because now I don't have to put on makeup. Like I just, so they can be fashionable too.
Nice. Well, just another reason to try them out.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to have to get a pair now.
I know.
We'll have to get one. But finishing up this conversation with regards to just some take-home recommendations for people that are fairly easy. Talked about number of hours of sleep. You talked about some people being genetically predisposed to sleeping, going to bed later at night. Would you recommend people having genetic tests done to find this stuff out?
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, it's a little bit more expensive now than it used to be. I think it's like $300 to do the 23andMe test. It will change your behavior. Like it changed how I trained in CrossFit, because I had always assumed I was like an anaerobic athlete, just, being a gymnast, being a pole vaulter, being a sprinter hurdler. But then I realized I have like mixed fiber types, where I have this like hybrid of like anaerobic, aerobic training. And it makes sense now because I do better on like those longer like hero workouts, which is like the perfect mix of that. It will change your behavior. I think every athlete, like if I was an athletic director of a collegiate athletic program, I would actually like mandate to every coach that they get their athletes like genotyped, so their athletes can have an awareness of like, I think, planning their lifestyle and like their sport around their biology. And again, I know that's only one side of the coin, but like, it's just like with any car, right? Like think of your biology as a high performance engine. Like you're already going to start out like that much better if you have a high performance engine in your car versus like a 4-cylinder.
All right, I'm gonna have to do that too. Check off this list here of all the things that I have to do. I've held off for a while. I think in the past, those 23andMe basically was just tell me about your ancestry, tell me about where your family's genealogy is from, and now it's expanded into basically telling you everything about how you're made up, so you can make more appropriate decisions according to how to eat, how to sleep, how to work out efficiently. Maybe there's a sport that's appropriate for you according to how you're made up. So it seems like it's a lot more robust than it had been in the past.
Absolutely. And actually, to increase your confidence in it, I believe their headquarters is still in Palo Alto. And
oh, is it?
They were their original sequencers of 23andMe were all at Stanford, because Stanford is like the center of this field that I'm a part of. It's called behavioral genetics. Stanford is like the premier like world's leader in behavioral genetic research. So
awesome. Good to hear. Go Stanford.
So Dave, what if you get your results back and it says you should have been a weightlifter?
I will crumble them up and throw them away.
I mean, there's similar attributes, though,
yeah,
right?
There are, yeah.
Weightlifter, it's all about power.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to tell me that my legs were meant to be more than the chicken legs that they are.
Yeah.
So I think I was born to be a gymnast. So we'll see. But another quick take home points for people: get some blue light glasses. Use them throughout the day, especially if you're not in a field where you need to be on the go, reacting quickly. Get the technology out of the bedroom and try to stay off computer work for an hour prior to going to sleep. Mm-hmm. All things that could be helpful for people to implement. Yes. And then napping. Yes. 30 minute nap. TNT, work it into your schedule so you can optimize each day.
Yes.
Amazing.
Those things will make a world of a difference. They're little 1% changes, and you don't even have to implement them all at once, just over time. And it will make your day that much better.
Love it. Well, do you mind sticking around for a couple additional minutes? Because I want to ask you a couple other things.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
This one's just fascinating to me. You're in a small group of people that are in line to potentially you are part of the Army Astronaut program. And this is incredible. And I would love to hear a little bit more about what the program is, how you got selected for, and kind of what it really means for you to potentially be an astronaut.
Yeah. So, I wanted to be an astronaut since I was 7. I grew up in Ohio, and we have a lot of astronauts. And actually, I used to idolize Sally Ride, one of the female astronauts from the 80s and 90s growing up. But nobody really gives you a formula or a playbook how to become one. And also it's not like NASA hires every day. So I found out a few years ago through my sergeant major that oversees the Army Warrior Fitness Team that they were going to reinvigorate the Army Astronaut program. Basically what it is every branch of service gets a seat at the table for selecting people who could go through the selection pipeline to become an astronaut. So the Army has an astronaut program, the Navy does, the Air Force, and then you have all the civilians, non-military people who apply. So he told me this, and he's like, "Ma'am, you're going to be an astronaut." I'm like, "Sergeant Major, okay, how are we going to do this?" And so anyway, sure enough, the announcement came out. There was 12,000 people from the Army who applied, and basically it was just a resume and our what we had done, in the Army. But I had a life before the Army. I also have done research in extreme environments. I've studied sleep and wake patterns in Costa Rica and Antarctica, and one of the southernmost bases in the entire world where you only have access to food, resources, and medical care 6 months out of the year. And the other 6 months, you're shut off from the rest of the world. I've done research in Costa Rica. And then, of course, my coaching athletic background, too. So I was very lucky. I was basically one of the few candidates selected of the 12,000 to move forward. And so now we're in the larger pool with the Navy, the Air Force, and then they had a call this time last year for civilians to apply. So I'm in this small group of people, and from what I hear, I'm supposed to be invited to NASA this summer for some on-site selection activities. But I've been preparing myself in the meantime. So I got certified as through the Army in dive medicine. So I got all my scuba certs, do advanced scuba. I'm trained to do medical rescue now. Last night, I just did my first night dive to, challenge myself there. I started learning Russian because Russian is the language of the International Space Station and mission control to this day. And it turns out, I contacted the department chair of Russian studies at the University of Louisville. Turns out he's my next door neighbor. So
wow.
at night, we walk our dogs together and talk Russian. And I'm sure people think that's a little weird, but that's what we do. So yeah, I'm super grateful, super honored. If I don't make it this time, obviously I don't think the space program is going away anytime soon. So reapply and, then bring the principles and practices of Power Monkey to space. Because
there you go.
Muscle atrophy is a real thing, especially if
Absolutely.
I go on this mission, right? God knows what that does to your body.
So, okay, this is absolutely fascinating. We do a podcast just in this, but
amazing.
A couple of things on that. One, when will they be doing this election? Do they have kind of an end date to this pool of candidates?
Well, it was already supposed to happen, but COVID has significantly delayed the timeline. From what I hear now, I should know by the end of this year if I'm moving to NASA permanently or not. For
Wow, that's incredible.
I
Well,
should
good
say
luck with
permanently,
that.
but like moving there for a long time to go through astronaut training. Because like once you're selected as part of like the next astronaut class, you spend like 2 years training at NASA full time to prepare you for your space mission. So
It's incredible. My 4-year-old is fascinated with space right now, and she just got an astronaut suit sent to her the other day by Jordan, one of our team power. She wears her astronaut suit, her helmet, her gloves. She wears it like every day, and she's like fascinated by it. So I have to tell her some of this stuff. Like, no, we know someone that's actually going to be a real astronaut. So she
so
won't
we
stop talking about it.
FaceTime with her if she
Oh
wants.
my God, she would love it. She
Well,
would love it.
Dave, will she be at camp this year?
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah. So
Okay, yeah. Literally, I would say once a week, one of my friends from like high school or college like will FaceTime me and be like, Inslee wants to talk to you. It's
This will
awesome.
be
Yeah. I actually, my friend Andy, she like, oh my God, this like touched my heart. Her daughter's in kindergarten, and like I gave a Zoom lecture to their like kindergarten class, and then
mhm.
they made pictures of me, and oh my God, they were so cute.
That's
Like,
amazing.
yeah,
That's so
I
cool.
still
That's so
have all
cool.
those pictures, and I will the rest of my life.
Well, you will meet my daughter at camp, and she will become you will become her hero in person. So, um, another question that though, I heard you say Mars in there. Now, I know that there's so much more space research that's being done because of a lot of the private companies that have been coming on board between SpaceX and um, you know uh, Bezos's company and Blue Origin, right? And some others that are putting in a lot of funding and interest in this outside of just what NASA's doing. Now, Elon Musk seems to have a mission to Mars within the next 5 to 10 years. Do you think that that's legitimate? And you mentioned potentially being a candidate to go to Mars. Is that interesting to you to actually go there? And I mean, are people coming back from a mission like that, or is that a one-way trip?
So, I mean, Elon Musk has already pushed the barrier so much already. Like people said, you doing this is just like full on crazy, but
Mm-hmm.
it's shown that full on crazy is possible. And the thing is like he's not afraid to fail. And that's how you make this happen
Mm-hmm.
is like that beautiful act of the scientific method of testing and evaluating and like learning from your failures. And
Mm-hmm.
he has like accelerated the timeline. So I would take his word for it, like in 5 to 10 years. And I know NASA. NASA has never stopped doing research, and some of the academic partners that do research have always looked at the impact of space travel on the human body. Ideally, that's like what I would do up there as a
Mm-hmm.
scientist. So I do think it's possible to go there and back. I believe it's a 3-year journey. But honestly, if it was one way, like I would still do it. I know that seems crazy, but like to like be that person who dies on another planet or like out of the Earth's atmosphere, like
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't think of a better way to go, like without ending this podcast so darkly.
I don't think that's dark. It's just expanding what
Yeah.
human beings are capable of doing. I think it's amazing. And
Yeah.
to hear someone, because you hear people say that they would submit themselves for that type of a trip, but to legitimately hear from someone that's in the pool to do that, and to hear the reasoning behind it, I think is fascinating. It's incredible. And whether or not it's real or whether or not it's going to be possible within our lifetime, which it seems like it's becoming more of a possibility, you seem to be the kind of candidate that would be perfect and ideal for it.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Like one of my department chairs, he always used to say, like, I remind him of Magellan and that like I always am, like down for an adventure and like discovering new things, and that's just how I am. But I think people also don't realize like what it takes to become an astronaut, and that's what I love about kids having this dream early on, right? Like you kind of have to like start this dream out early on
Hmm.
and like put yourself in a position where you're constantly pushing your brain and your body. Like even last night, like doing that night dive, I was like scared because I know like all the things that could possibly go wrong, even like physiologically. And then like when I posted about it on like Facebook, all my mom's friends and like friends from high school and stuff were like, that is like the straight out of my nightmares. I can't believe you did that. But then it's like you need people like that who are like, shoot, like
Right.
that's my biggest, deepest fear. Well, I'm gonna just go do it, you know?
Right. Well, thank you for being at the forefront of so many
Mhm.
different areas. We didn't even get into all the stuff that you did with COVID in New York, which I think is incredible as well. You touched out in the beginning, being that you're going to be up on a billboard in Times Square tomorrow when you do the workout.
Yeah.
Allison, you're an incredible human being. I feel fortunate to be speaking with you, and that you've become generous enough with your time here today, and also being willing to come and be a part of our Power Monkey Camp in a few weeks. And I really, really hope that we can have you back on again sometime soon to talk about all of the other amazing things that you have going on in your life, because this is just a portion of it.
Well, I really appreciate it. And I give the same sentiment to the both of you. Funny enough, David, I don't know if Jordan told you this, but like I texted my cousin right before I came here or like got on the podcast because she used to have, we used to subscribe to like Gymnastics International or like those
Hmm.
magazines growing
Yeah,
up.
sure.
She used to have your poster, like posters of you hanging up in the room.
Nice.
Yes.
So I'm gonna throw my cousin like under the bus and make her super embarrassed right now. So
Nice.
I'm
I
huge.
mean, I've always idolized you too, but
Well, thank you.
Hey, I've got the
Hopefully I
same
did
poster. I've
disappoint.
got the same poster hanging up in my bedroom.
Except Chad throws darts at it.
Exactly. But it's still there.
Well, thank you for that. That's very, very nice. Please wish your cousin give her my best, and hopefully I can do something worthy of a new poster sometime soon.
Yes.
Before we get you out, a couple quick questions. First one, what sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Mm.
Oh, gymnastics.
Oh,
See that,
I
Chad?
don't. I am I'm not excited about 21.4 now. That's just. I'm not excited. Like, yeah.
yeah,
I love it. Thank
that's
you.
fair enough. It's fair enough. Gymnastics background, everything else. I'll take it, I guess.
The next quick question. Anyone that you think we should have on the podcast that would be a great guest?
Ooh. Um. So I think you really need somebody who sort of looks at the impact of exercise on the brain, because I think that is something that is so undervalued in terms of like neuroplasticity and things like that. There's this woman speaking at the conference. Her name is Wendy Suzuki. She wrote a book like a very. I mean, I wrote a book about it too, but like mine isn't nearly the level of detail and like understanding as hers. So I would say Wendy Suzuki, and I can
Fantastic.
facilitate that because she is speaking at the conference here tomorrow.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Please
That'd be
do.
awesome. Well, speaking of books, another question that we have is, do you have any books that you've come across lately that you'd recommend aside from your own? I mean, we should certainly point the listeners to that one. Absolutely, no doubt. But besides yours, is there another one that you would recommend?
Yeah. So believe it or not, though, it's a fiction book. So I've over the years have sort of like I heard like Dave Castro used to like he only reads classic fiction, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm not like the only weirdo. But I've been reading this book. It was actually recommended to me by he's a former NFL player. His name's Prince Daniels, and he has this like huge focus on like meditation and mindfulness now, and he teaches it to like kids in underserved communities. But he recommended this book that Kobe Bryant recommended him. I actually have it right here. I'm about halfway through it. It's like incredible, and it sort of like goes through like the path of like how meditation and mindfulness came to be. But it's like a fictional story. It's called Shintaram. It's super thick, it's super big, but it's like absolutely incredible.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we appreciate that recommendation as well. And as Dave said, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast and getting to know you. And I didn't even realize you're going to be at camp. So that's a bonus for me. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better in person and everything else. And, we've already talked about so many things that you have coming up. So we don't need to touch on that again. But do you have any parting words for our listeners before we get out of here?
Yeah. I mean, I think in this sort of like is how I came to be is I always tell people to plan your career around your lifestyle and not your lifestyle around your career. Because if you're doing that, like work doesn't feel like work. I mean, I used all my leave days in the military to work for O2X, where I go and I work and like I'm teaching in the classroom, which is something I enjoy. And like every day, I work every day of my life, but it doesn't feel like work because I enjoy what I do. And I think that's so important, whatever it is.
Awesome. Awesome recommendation to end on there. So guys, be sure to take that in and think about it.
And remember, if you want amazing meals delivered right to your home that can be keto-friendly, gluten-free, vegetarian-friendly, head to rosiejoemeals.com. That's ROSIEJO meals.com and use the offer code PMC10 for 10% off your meal order when you spend $100 or more.
And also be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Also, check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.